Hi, I'm Mary Ledwig, but you probably know me as Molly Pitcher. Molly Pitcher is just my nickname. Not to brag or anything, but I'm actually pretty famous. Oh, you're asking why? Well, I'll probably start at the beginning if that's okay with you. Well, I was born on October 13th, 1754 in Trenton, New Jersey. I lived on my father's dairy farm with the rest of my family. My mother and I would work around the kitchen, and sometimes I'd go into the barn and count the chickens with my brother Carl. I worked at the farm until I was 15 when I got a job. I became a servant to a doctor's family. His name was Dr. Irvine. If you're wondering how I got the job when I was 15, you can say I have many unique qualities. Because my mother being part Dutch, our family had their culture. And Dutch people can do many things, like predict the weather and cure many things like how to remove warts. It's really gross, but you just use half a potato. It's crazy, I know. But there was this one time when Mrs. Irvine was purchasing furniture. The wind was really hard and the wagon's cover flew off. And it dragged it across, and we're almost flying towards the ocean where the jagged rocks were. I remember taking a knife and cutting a slash in it, and we didn't hit the rocks. I think Dr. Irvine came up and thanked me for saving their lives. It was really a good day for me, but I did almost die. After that, Dr. Irvine and us continued traveling to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Mrs. Irvine told me that she wished that she was wearing wooden shoes instead of leather ones. Well, I always wore wooden shoes. Well, I wore clogs. Why? It was in the Dutch culture, and I grew up with it. When we arrived, I became the laundry woman, the cook, and the caretaker of Dr. Irvine's children. A year later, I married William Hayes, a barber. Then the Revolutionary War came, and of course, he enlisted and became a gunner in the artillery. Of course, I tagged along with him. Then the battle came, and the weather was horrible. It was really hot and humid, and soldiers were passing out and dying just because of the heat. The general told me that this is no place for a woman and that I should go back to my parents' house. Did I listen? Why, of course not. I took a horse and rode to the river and filled pitchers of water and took them back to the troops to fill their canteens. That's when I got the nickname Molly Pitcher. Then, on the evening of June 28, 1778, General George Washington ordered troops to continue firing cannons until we won. Troops were dying, and I would fetch water from a nearby well and give the soldiers water from the pitchers. I'd go back and forth until I came by William's cannon, and he wasn't firing. He sat beside the cannon, overcome by the heat. I gave him water and tried to hydrate him. Then suddenly an orderly came over asking why he wasn't firing the cannon. I said he had heat stroke and that he couldn't fire the cannon. Well, he couldn't fire the cannon. He had heat stroke. And the man said it was General's orders to keep firing the cannons. Well, I've seen William fire the cannon, and I knew how to do it. All you have to do is swab, load, and fire. As I manned the cannon and continued firing, the same orderly came over saying that no gunner could do better than I was doing and that he was going to tell General George Washington of the good work I did. I continued to swab, load, and fire, and swab and load and fire. The heat was horrible, but I continued firing. The battle continued on all night. My dress was covered in gunpowder, so was my face and hands, but I knew I had to keep going. During the battle, William was taken to the field hospital, and I knew he'd be okay. But then I heard that the English had fled, so when I heard the news, I tried to get to the hospital where William was. Then that same orderly came over and said that General George Washington wanted me to come to his headquarters. I must say, I didn't look nice. I was covered in gunpowder from head to toe. But of course I came. I mean, he is General George Washington. When I came in, he said that I did a fantastic job. And just to mention, he said I did a fantastic job, and I was a woman, so that was like really cool to hear. So afterwards, he said he'd make me a sergeant from the General George Washington. I became a heroine just because of those 3 things that I did in just 2 battles. After the Revolutionary War, William and I went back to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, until he died in 1789. Of course, he was much older than me. So I married George Macaulay. I grew older and died of old age on January 22nd, 1832 in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.